What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and today we're going to be going over Hitstun Decay and Hitstun Deterioration. And so what this is actually the process of attacking a character, getting them into a combo state, and as the combo continues on, the amount of hitstun given by each attack lessens. This is a way to prevent against infinites. This will also allow the defender a chance to get out. Eventually, attacks will stop landing. So I've set up my values specifically so you can see them. I've commented out my other logs that I have in the game. And if I just start spamming my attack now, you can look at the log in the bottom left and you can see how the same attack is stunning the character for less frames. Now this attack requires 40 frames of hit stun to be able to connect. My animations are a little bit slower, so normally you won't have that many frames of hit stun most likely. But since my animations are this slow, I have increased how much hit stun is given so that the flow can still match. And so you can see as soon as there are only 40 frames of hit stun, when I go to execute the next move, the combo breaks. Now, if we simply increase the amount of hit stun that this attack gives, so if I go to my mutant hitbox data, and I go to the attack that I'm using, which is my light attack hitbox 2, I can increase the hit stun frames to be something like 60, adding 10 additional frames of hit stun. And now when I play the game, I come in here like always, and if I am to do the same logic where I start spamming my one attack, I will be able to continue my combo for longer because there's more frames of hit stun. And I could continue it all the way to my combo king counter, which just means that I landed 10 hits in a row, and then the character was no longer able to continue at that point. But you could say I could combo for longer because I had more hitstun frames, even with this hitstun decay. The method I'm using is actually very simple. Basically, on every hit, I am applying some hitstun decay, so it is getting less every hit. Specifically, I'm just doing 2 frames, but I have a modifier that can be easily changed so that you can make it whatever value you'd like. There's this method of hitstun decay, and then there's the other method of hitstun decay that I see a lot. Basically, there is a timer that begins when a combo starts, and as the actual time that has passed increases, the hitstun decay also increases. This way, the maximum combo gets shorter. So if you're doing slower, heavier attacks, over time, more hitstun decay is applying, and it's less likely that they will be able to connect. I won't be covering that type of hitstun decay in today's episode, but I will be covering it because I think it's important, and it's an important distinction to make, as it can really change how your game plays. If you have hitstun decay on each individual hit, then you'll know that the more hits you have, the more hitstun decay you'll have. But if you have hitstun decay on a timer, then you'll know that you have to act quick to connect those hits, because it's not always about the actual number of hits in the combo. Before we get started, guys, if you want to get caught up in the series, I'll link you to this playlist right here in the top right corner. That is the fighting game tutorial series, so you can check out everything we've done to this point. I believe this is episode 167, so we are very far along in the series, but we still have a really long way to go. Otherwise, if you only care about the hitstun decay, then I'll go ahead and link you to this episode right here, which is where we initially implemented hitstun in the series. We are going to be building on top of that, so I'd recommend watching that, even if you haven't watched the rest of the series, just so that you're familiar with how that works. With that out of the way, we can get started. So let's go into the code to begin today, and we're going to go to our fighter template character. We only need to add one variable today, and that is going to be our hitstun decay modifier. So scroll down to where your floats are, and I have one here called hitstun decay modifier that I've added for today's episode. The comment says the hitstun decay / deterioration that occurs during combos can be set for linear or scaling effect. So right now, when I'm losing 2 frames every time, that is a linear hitstun decay. Right? Every hit, the same amount of decay is being applied. I mean, it's adding up over time, but it's the same amount every time. Every additional hit is 2 more frames off the hitstun. A scaling hitstun decay would mean that you have a percentage so that as your combo gets higher, you're taking off more hit stun frames for every hit. For example, if you have 10 frames of hit stun, and let's say at 5 hits, you take away 1 whole frame, but at 10 hits, you're taking away 5 whole frames of hit stun. Clearly, that is not a linear relationship, because at 5 hits, you were taking away 1 frame of hit stun, but double that, you're taking away 5 times as many frames of hit stun. So that can be implemented as well. It's actually very easy. It's just going to depend on what this modifier value is. So I made this U property, edit anywhere, blueprint read write, with a category of combo, just a float called Hitstun Decay modifier. Let's go into the fighter template character.cpp and let's set this in the constructor. So I'm setting my modifier to 2.0, which is essentially why they were losing 2 additional frames every time, because I was just taking the combo counter and multiplying the Hitstun Decay modifier. Now let's go down to our take damage function. Our take damage function is where our Hitstun Decay is going to be applied. So here's my take damage function yet again. In my take damage function, we're going to find the spot where our combo counter is being incremented. And for me, that is this logic right here. Right after this logic, we were setting num stun frames to be equal to the hit stun frames that are passed into the function. The reason I'm doing it here is because our num stun frames are set in other areas, such as during a counter hit, or even during a block for block stun. But we don't want to apply Hitstun Decay while the character is being counter hit, and we don't want to apply it while the character is block stun. We only want to apply it on a basic hit when a combo could be active. So I've commented out the line that we had before, and instead of that, I'm doing this if else. Now the initial check in this if statement is going to check for the same thing that our combo counter checks for, to see if num stun frames is greater than 0, thus if this was a combo hit. Because of that, you could put your num stun frames equals hit stun frames inside of this if statement that we already had. But the reason I'm not doing that is because if other player is false for any reason, like we show here, then we could still want Hitstun Decay to occur. So for example, if we have some sort of mode without an enemy, Hitstun could still apply in that bonus round. We don't need the enemy at all for this case. However, if there is no enemy, we don't want them to have a combo counter. So they are slightly different. Even though they're very similar, they are not exactly the same. So I'm checking to see if num stun frames is greater than 0. And additionally, I'm checking something that you haven't seen before. This is something we're going to add to take damage. And that is not should ignore Hitstun Decay. It is possible for certain actions, certain attacks, to ignore Hitstun Decay. This will allow these certain actions to apply the same amount of hitstun that they would from their attack regardless of where they were hit in the combo. You have to be careful with these because these could allow infinites to occur, and remember the whole point of Hitstun Decay is to make infinites impossible and to make it possible for the character being attacked to escape their combo. But a lot of games will have at least one instance of an attack that can ignore Hitstun Decay. So should ignore Hitstun Decay is a variable that I'm adding to take damage. It is another parameter that is going to be in this parameter list. So let's go back into our fighter template character.h and scroll down to our take damage function. In here, we have a long list of parameters. And at the very end, we had some default parameters such as hit sound, should cause hard knockdown, and now I'm adding a new one. Bool should ignore Hitstun Decay equals false. So by default, it is false because we don't want to ignore it the majority of the time. But if we tell this function we do want to ignore it, then we can simply just use the hitstun frames that are already passed into this function earlier in the parameter list, which is right here. So you can just add this new parameter into take damage. When you do this, of course, you have to edit the CPP for take damage as well. So take damage, if I scroll over in my parameter list, you see I have bool should ignore Hitstun Decay. Now scrolling back down to where we were, we're going to make sure that we should not ignore Hitstun Decay. That's what the exclamation mark means. Not ignore Hitstun Decay. So if we've already been hit at least once and we shouldn't ignore Hitstun Decay, then we know that this is stun frames being set from a combo state. In that case, we want to apply Hitstun Decay. The actual calculation for how many stun frames you'll get with the factored in Hitstun Decay really is up to you. I'm going to show you an example of one that you could do, but you could change this around in so many different ways and still make it not only work for your game, this can even change the actual flow of combat in your game. It's that big of a deal because depending on how you handle Hitstun Decay, some things may link and others may not. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the number of hitstun frames that this attack would normally give, and I'm subtracting other player combo counter times Hitstun Decay modifier. So my calculation is very simple. Essentially, if we have a combo counter of 2, we've linked together 2 hits, and we multiply that by Hitstun Decay modifier, which I've defaulted to 2 up in the constructor, we will take away 4 frames of hitstun right off the bat. Then, if combo counter becomes 3 and Hitstun Decay modifier is still 2, then we'll take away 6 frames of hitstun on the next hit. That's why we're losing 2 frames of hitstun every time the combo counter goes up 1. This is a very simple method, but you can honestly change this to be whatever you want. So, another implementation could be combo counter times Hitstun Decay modifier, and then you change the Hitstun Decay modifier by adding something like 0.05f. Or you could go and make it 0.5f. Whatever you do to this, it's going to change the next time you come into this logic. Say your combo counter is now being multiplied by 2.5. That's going to change how many frames that you lose of hitstun every combo counter increase. Something like this would be a scaling Hitstun Decay, because over time, with each hit, it gets higher and higher. So if you want it linear, you do what I did here, where you just have one line, and it's that same line every time. If you want it to be scaling, then you update the modifier on each hit. We can comment this as well in case we want to see it. So update the Hitstun Decay modifier for scaling Hitstun Decay. Then I just have a log in here, which I'm actually going to put above when the num stun frames is set. So right after the num stun frames is set, I just have this log to show you how many stun frames there are. That way you can actually see the decay. It's not required that you do this, of course. This is just so that we can debug it and make sure everything's working as intended. I will go ahead and run the game so that you can see the difference with the decay modifier. Remember, every time we were only losing 2 frames of hitstun. Let's see how this is affected with this new update. Alright, I'm in the editor for the changes with the scaling Hitstun Decay. So if we go into the stage, remember, with this new method, the scaling Hitstun Decay, we should actually lose more than 2 frames as the combo goes on. So let's start out. We have 56, 52, 48, 42, 36. You can see as the combo went on, we're losing more than 2 hitstun frames of decay every hit in the combo. If you do want to go with this scaling Hitstun Decay, then you'll want to make sure you go to your end combo function as well. Right here. And we will want to make sure that our Hitstun Decay is reset to the default value. We use 2.0 by default, so we're going to set it back to 2.0. If you're using the linear decay, where you don't update the Hitstun Decay modifier, then you don't have to add that into the end combo. So this is up to you. There's 2 different methods. One where you update the Hitstun Decay modifier of each hit in the combo and then reset that value in end combo, and one where you just simply run this line. It's up to you what you choose, but regardless of what you choose, the else statement here means the number of stun frames isn't greater than 0, or the attack that is hitting this character should ignore hit stun decay. Thus, we want to set num stun frames equal to the full hit stun frames that comes into the function. So this is all we were doing before. Now we're doing all this instead. I'm going to get rid of the commented outline, as that has essentially just become what is inside the else statement. With that out of the way, we have to make sure that we have a way to set should ignore Hitstun Decay, that variable that we set up in take damage. And to do this, I'd recommend just putting it on the hitbox actor. So if you go to hitboxactor.h and scroll down, we have our f hitbox data. F hitbox data has all of our variables for our hitbox that can be set within the data table. And so I've added a new variable in here called should ignore Hitstun Decay that is a Boolean. I've given it the same U property as all the other variables in the structure. And literally, it's just should this hitbox ignore Hitstun Decay in a combo. Of course, we don't need to set the default value in the CPP because that is a value in the structure and it is going to be set by the data table. So once you update this value, we can go into our data table for our hitboxes. And if we want it to ignore Hitstun Decay, we can select all of our attacks that'll want to do it. We'll probably only want projectiles, strikes, and throws to have this option. Proximity won't need it because proximity doesn't do damage or apply hit stun. And then we can check should ignore Hitstun Decay in the data table for the moves that we want. Now we'll want to go into our animation blueprint and go to the attack that is spawning the hitbox that we're comboing with, or if you have multiple, go to all of those anim notifies. And we will need to update our create active hitbox, create projectile hitbox, and create throw hitbox to accept this should ignore Hitstun Decay if we want them to. The only one I have right now is create active hitbox. I'm going to do the other two live with you. But I clicked on my create active hitbox function. I added a new input parameter that is a Boolean, and I called it should ignore Hitstun Decay. Then I took my break hitbox data that was set up to grab all the data from that value from the data table, made sure that should ignore Hitstun Decay is a pin, and then I just brought it into the create active hitbox. From here I went into create active hitbox, and now I had this new pin, should ignore Hitstun Decay, which I brought into a reroute node and positioned it here. That way, when we were setting the members of hitbox data and we line up all of our variables here, I was able to click on it, make sure should ignore Hitstun Decay was a pin on here, and just brought it directly into this node as well. Basically, we spawn a hitbox and we transfer the data that came into this function by setting the members of this hitbox to what we found from the data table. We've done this so many times throughout the series, so I don't feel that I need to go over it any more than that, but that should hopefully make sense. One additional note here, this structure where I had should attach going into this branch, at some point it got overwritten so that should cause hard knockdown was going into this branch. But actually this is the attachment branch. So I don't know why that happened or when that happened, but if you copied that for any reason, because I accidentally made that mistake at one point, just make sure that should attach is going into the branch and not should cause hard knockdown. And with that out of the way, we are actually good with create active hitbox. Now I'd recommend if you want to do this to do it for the other functions as well. So I'm going to go to create projectile hitbox and we can use our fireball as an example. So if I scroll down to spawn fireball, we have a create projectile hitbox here. And I'm going to organize it a little bit. Create projectile hitbox, I'm going to do the same thing where I add a Boolean should ignore Hitstun Decay. And now I have this as a Boolean on my create projectile hitbox. For this one, I'm actually not using the data table, just mainly because I was lazy, but I do use it for the homing thunderball. And so here, you can see I have should ignore Hitstun Decay. I just want to pass that along into my create projectile hitbox. And same way that we set up create active hitbox, we want to make sure that we now use this new Boolean that we have. So I'm just going to make a reroute node. And I'm going to bring it over here. And for my set members and hitbox data, we want to make sure that should ignore Hitstun Decay is a pin. And I'm going to clean this up real quick. Now I'm going to pass the new boolean into should ignore Hitstun Decay. And we're good to go. The last one we want to do is our throw, and I do have my throw set up with create throw hitbox. Here is my backward throw grab active. This is where we spawn the throw hitbox. So in here, I want to do the same thing as the other stuff. Simply, I want to click on create throw hitbox, add a new parameter, boolean, should ignore Hitstun Decay. And I'm going to pass in should ignore Hitstun Decay from the broken hitbox data. Then we can go into create throw hitbox as always, and we can drag off of this and make a reroute node just to clean it up a little bit. And I'll bring it over to here as well. Make sure I actually plug that in so that we can use it. There we go. So I have my should ignore Hitstun Decay. Then I want to make sure that the set members and hitbox data has should ignore Hitstun Decay as a pin that is checked. So I'll check that, and then I will pass it in right here. All right, that is all of our possible functions that could potentially use should ignore Hitstun Decay set up. The last place we need to go is the hitbox actor BP. So I'm going to go here. And we want to do what we did in the past few episodes where we were updating our take damage function. Essentially, we want to see everywhere that we call take damage. And if it's applicable, we want to make sure that we are passing the should ignore Hitstun Decay from the hitbox into the take damage function. So I'm just going to go to all my places. Now this initial logic up here in the red comment is old logic that I use for referencing the tutorial series, earlier date, so I don't have to actually edit this one. Again, this is outdated logic. I just do this for reference, for helping people in the Discord community. And same with this one. So these two I can skip. That means we have 3 take damage calls that I actually want to use here. So I have 2 take damage calls right next to each other, and both of these are part of the projectile logic. So in both of these calls, I have a hitbox data that we use. You'll notice that should ignore Hitstun Decay is here as one of the options, and take damage now takes in a should ignore Hitstun Decay. So I can literally just drag it into each of these. I can take the top one and the bottom one and just pass should ignore Hitstun Decay. It's that simple. There's one other take damage, and it is going to be up higher. This is all part of my check collision event that we set up in the last hitbox episode. So the proximity hitbox doesn't deal damage, so we don't have to worry about it there. The strike hitbox does deal damage, and you see that should ignore Hitstun Decay needs to be filled out and take damage here. And we have this little broken hitbox data that has should ignore Hitstun Decay. So I can literally drag off of it and drag it into take damage. That's all we want to do. I'm just going to clean it up as well. Make sure we have that looking pretty nice. Something like this is honestly fine. I know it's pretty messy because we have so many things going on in this blueprint, but it does the job. And we're good there. Now the throw is in here, but the throw doesn't actually deal damage when the throw collides. The grapple that occurs puts the character into the throw state, and the damage is dealt when the character that was thrown lands. So to actually set the Hitstun Decay from being ignored on that one, we're going to go to the anim notify, where our character would take damage after they were thrown, and that is right here, my apply throw damage anim notify. And here I'm calling take damage directly on the character with the damage and the sound. I additionally want to make sure that the should ignore Hitstun Decay is being passed into this take damage. And this hitbox in my data table, backward throw damage, is the one where I would want to say I should ignore Hitstun Decay. That is all of our cases handled for that. So all that's left to do is to test this out and see how it goes. Make sure that our ignoring Hitstun Decay is also working. So assuming this attack ignores Hitstun Decay, then every time we perform this action, perform this attack and land it in the combo, it should do the same number of hit stun frames. And you can see nothing's printing, and that is because it is actually skipping this if statement, and it's just being set to num hit stun frames, which means it is working. For the sake of being thorough, we can go ahead and print out the log in here as well. I'll relaunch and we can see the hit stuns in action. Alright, the editor is open one final time, so let's go ahead and launch our game. Let's try it again with our new setup, and the light attack should perform the same number of hit stun frames every attack with this setup, and it does. There is no Hitstun Decay on this attack. Now, if I am to go back into my mutant hitbox data and disable it, this way it does not ignore Hitstun Decay. We come back into the level. We launch it one final time. We go to the output log and start doing attacks. You'll see that the Hitstun Decay is in effect. So anyway, guys, that's all I got for you today. That's how you can implement Hitstun Decay and Hitstun Deterioration in your game. I hope I was able to help you, and if I was, please subscribe. It does a ton for me and helps out the channel a lot. I want to give a huge shout out to my Patreon members and supporters. Thank you guys for all you do. You guys really help me out with continuing to be able to make these series. Thank you guys so much for everything. If you had any issues with this episode or any of my tutorials, feel free to join the Discord community. It's completely free, and I'd be happy to help you out with any of those problems. Anyway, guys, that's all I got, so thank you so much for watching. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.